Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. In this video, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and more specifically the kiss of death signal. How likely is it that this year in 2023, the kiss of death signal could trigger on Bitcoin? And if so, what does it mean for Bitcoin anyway? And also, guys, I'm going to show you this chart and what it potentially means for Bitcoin this year. There's something interesting there I want to talk about. All right, guys, join me. Alright guys, welcome back. So in a few minutes, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the kiss of death signal, and also this chart, which is some important significance for Bitcoin this year. Now, before we discuss Bitcoin, I want to mention something very important here. As you know, last year, 2022, was one of the most awful periods for stock markets, bonds, crypto, and even the real estate market. Now, there are currently signs of recovery in these markets. For example, we've seen stock markets and Bitcoin go up in recent months, but nobody knows for certain whether this recovery will last. While there are encouraging signs that inflation is coming down since last year, it is impossible to be sure whether the Federal Reserve will succeed in keeping inflation under control. Remember that to the average person, it feels like the economy is getting worse. Let's look again at this survey from MarketWatch, which revealed that more than half of Americans who make six figures are now living paycheck to paycheck. Even young people with a college education and with high-paying jobs are struggling to do basic things like paying rent and making car payments. Now, as you're aware, the rich and multimillionaires are not only interested in assets like stocks and bonds. So what are they interested in, you may ask? Well, according to a report by Morgan Stanley on alternative investments, as their graph shows, for the last 30 years, a portfolio that included alternative assets would have had lower volatility and higher returns. According to Bank of America, real assets such as fine art may offer investors protection against inflation while diversifying their portfolios. Now, this should not surprise you. We have said many times in our videos that it's important to be well diversified among asset classes. Remember that proper diversification means taking into account assets that are not closely correlated to the other major assets. For example, did you know that last year art prices rose an average of 29%, while at the same time stock markets had a miserable year? In fact, contemporary art prices have more than doubled the S&P 500's total return over the last 26 years. Also, the art market has a correlation of less than 0.3 to cash. It is true that past performance is not a guarantee of future results, but we now know that there is an alternative to other assets when it comes to diversifying, and that is fine art. Masterworks is the platform where you can learn how to invest in multi-million-dollar paintings without breaking the bank. Masterworks, who by the way are the sponsor for this video, has nearly 700,000 users, and they returned over $25 million to their investors in 2022 alone. You see, Masterworks offers art from legends like Picasso, which is securitized with the SEC and broken into shares. Then, when they sell a painting, the investor gets a slice of the potential return. In December, Masterworks had 3 exits deliver 10, 13, and 35% net return to investors. This is while the average 60-40 stock bond portfolio lost around 25% last year. But it's not just those 3 exits. Masterworks has even sold 2 more offerings just in the last month, even as volatility in most markets remains high. Getting started with Masterworks is very easy. It takes just a few clicks. You go to their website, create an account, browse their artwork, and then you can learn how to diversify your portfolio with one of the most stable and strong assets in the world. You can get priority access by clicking the link in the description. Remember that any money we get from sponsors is donated to charity. We want to thank Masterworks for this opportunity. Alright guys, let's get back to the charts and talk about Bitcoin. Now, I realize the title of this video sounds rather scary and pessimistic, but stay with me, I think you might be surprised. And by the way, before we go into detail about the kiss of death and Bitcoin, let me just first of all mention that, as I'm sure you know, for the last several months, the majority of analysts and YouTubers out there have been extremely bearish and pessimistic on Bitcoin and crypto. As I'm sure you're aware, they've been calling for sub 10K levels, a major crash in Bitcoin and crypto, which by the way, I disagreed with. I mentioned I'm going to remain bullish on Bitcoin, and in fact, I mentioned that Bitcoin could very well bounce and rally towards a 27,376 level and even higher towards 30K. Here's a clip. So once we get a move and a close above 21,825 and 22K, it would increase the likelihood that the bottom has been reached on this decline, on this drop, and we could start the next major wave 3, the wave 3 likely taking us towards much higher levels. The wave 3 would take us towards 27,376 to 30K, and likely above 30K. So the first thing I want to talk about is the potential for a kiss of death signal for Bitcoin. How likely is it Is it likely that might happen this year in 2023? And what could it mean for Bitcoin? And also I'm going to show you this chart because it has a very interesting significance and meaning for Bitcoin this year. All right, guys, first of all, what is the kiss of death signal anyway? You probably remember I mentioned this particular signal in my videos last year, and I went into it in quite a lot of detail. Put it quite briefly. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but put it very briefly. As you can see here from this chart, this explains the rules for the kiss of death signal. And again, quite simply, all it means is that price, again, this could be any chart, any market. So all it means that if the price of any market drops from all-time highs below its monthly 21 EMA, in other words, the monthly 21 average, as you can see on this chart, it's the blue line. So for example, the price drops from its all-time highs, closes below the 21 monthly EMA, then bounces back, in other words, reverts back and tests the 21 monthly EMA. That test of the 21 EMA, the touching, is the kiss in this signal. However, there is no death as yet. It's just a kiss. The kiss of death occurs when the price collapses again, in other words, drops down and takes out the prior low before the bounce itself occurred. So in quite simple terms, that is the kiss of death as you see right there in that example. And by the way, I should mention the kiss of death signal itself is very bearish when it happens and when it occurs. In the past, whenever we've seen a kiss of death signal occur for any market, it has been an extremely bearish signal. It often signals catastrophic bear markets when it's confirmed. And I'll tell you in a few moments whether I think this could happen on Bitcoin or not. Now, as you may recall, last year in October, about September, October last year, we had a kiss of death signal on the stock market, on the S&P 500. However, as I mentioned to you at the time, we did not get any confirmation of that. So a kiss of death requires further confirmation. And the confirmation comes from another bounce, a secondary bounce, and then another drop and break of support. So in other words, another drop and a break of support is very important to confirm the kiss of death. Without that, there is no such thing as a kiss of death. And that's why we did not get any confirmation of the kiss of death signal on the stock market last year. In fact, you may remember from my videos last year, I mentioned there is no confirmation of a kiss of death at all on the stock market. For one thing, we did not get the 5 warning signs, and we did not get the break of support that we needed to confirm the kiss of death on the stock market. And that is why I changed my mind and I became bullish on the stock market from December of last year and also in January this year. Pretty much from the start of this year in January, I've been bullish on the stock market. Here's a clip. The reason why I have my doubts is some months ago I published a video you probably saw, and I mentioned the 5 warning signs that I'm looking for. You probably saw that video, and 2 of those warning signs did not happen. One of them was a move into resistance. The second thing is this: the stock market has not yet broken support. So my 5th criteria in that video was the market has to break support to reconfirm the kiss of death. The market has not done that either. So 2 of those important criteria have not been met. I'm cautiously remaining bullish on the market, which I know is controversial. A lot of people don't like me saying that, but I'm going to give the market the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to remain cautiously bullish on the market. Now, in terms of how this kiss of death signal is relevant to Bitcoin, let's take a look at the monthly chart of Bitcoin right now. As you can see here, Bitcoin has fallen from its all-time highs down below the monthly 21 EMA. That's the blue line you see on my chart. We closed below it. And as you can see, we then rally towards it. So as you can see from the lows we made in November of last year, we've now rallied back, reverted back to the mean. So it's bounced back towards the 21 monthly EMA. As I'm making this video, Bitcoin is currently very close to the 21 monthly EMA. So basically what this means is, at the moment, we only have 2 parts or 2 criteria for the kiss of death signal on Bitcoin. But there is no kiss of death. Why? Because as you can see here, even though Bitcoin has dropped below the 21 monthly EMA and then bounced back to it, and in fact, as you can see here, has tested it and is currently close to the 21 monthly EMA, the bottom line is there is no death within this overall pattern. There is no kiss of death pattern as yet on Bitcoin. And I'll tell you in a minute whether I think this signal is going to happen this year or not. How likely is it? But the main point to appreciate is the kiss of death signal on Bitcoin has not, I repeat, has not happened as yet, as we can see on the chart. The big question, which I think you're probably wondering right now, is, well, is it likely that we could see the death or the kiss of death pattern within this overall chart sometime this year in 2023? The answer to this question, in my view, is no. And I'm going to give you some explanations as to why I'm not expecting a kiss of death signal this year in 2023 for Bitcoin, which by the way should come as some good news to you. So let me just go through the reasons as to why I do not think that a kiss of death signal is going to happen this year for Bitcoin. The first most important reason is a very bullish signal which we received on Bitcoin some months ago. In fact, you may remember I mentioned this in my video back, I think it was in January, when I mentioned that the 2-week chart of Bitcoin, the 2-week time frame of Bitcoin, gave us a nice bullish crossover on the MACD. So usually when there's a MACD crossover, a bullish crossover, again on the MACD chart on the 2-week time frame, that's often a very bullish and a positive sign for Bitcoin. In the past, whenever this happened, this has been a very positive sign for Bitcoin, leading to big rallies and positive returns for the crypto. So that's the first sign. There is actually a second reason, that's to do with Elliott waves and Elliott wave theory. Now, I'm not going to discuss this in this particular video. I'll go into this in a separate video for you, and I've actually discussed this in much more detail in the members video already. But apart from Elliott wave theory, the third most important reason has to do with the fact that the Nasdaq and the tech sector in general is showing signs of strength and is outperforming the overall markets. And that's an important thing because usually when the Nasdaq and the tech sector in general is doing quite well and is showing signs of strength, that is a bullish sign for Bitcoin and crypto as well. The fourth important factor and bullish sign for Bitcoin is the fact that Bitcoin has managed to stay above, in other words, get above and stay above the weekly 21 EMA. As I'm sure you probably know, the weekly 21 EMA is a very important level on the chart, especially for Bitcoin. In the past, whenever Bitcoin has managed to get above its 21 weekly moving average, it's been a very positive sign. It's a bullish sign for the crypto. I mentioned this already in the previous video, you may recall.
Bitcoin has managed to finally get above the 21 weekly moving average. Whenever Bitcoin gets above its 21 EMA and stays above it, it's a good sign. It's a sign of a potential bull market.
So usually when Bitcoin manages to get above its 21 weekly moving average and stay above it, especially when BTC stays above its 21 weekly moving average for several weeks, it's a very good sign. It's a positive sign that Bitcoin is likely recovering and it's going from a bear market to a bull market. And again, my view is that Bitcoin has very likely began a bull market, not just now, but many weeks ago, as I mentioned to you some weeks and months ago when we got those important signals. Now, let's go to the final and most important factor as to why I'm remaining bullish for Bitcoin and crypto in general for this year in 2023. And that is with this chart you're seeing here. That is a chart of Ethereum. You see, guys, Ethereum just gave us a very powerful bullish sign that many people may not be aware of. And that is the fact that Ethereum managed to close above its August 2022 highs. As you can see from this chart, Ethereum just recently managed to rally and close above the August 2022 high resistance. That's a very important resistance, and it closed above it. And that is important from the perspective of the Dow theory. My good friend Manuel Bly, the DowTheory.com, uses Ethereum and Bitcoin in combination to give a much more stronger signal and a stronger probability for a potential bull market, usually when both of these close above resistance. And in fact, both of these markets, both Bitcoin and Ethereum, had secondary reactions in the upward direction. They had pullbacks and now a close above resistance levels. In fact, Ethereum has now managed to confirm Bitcoin's bullish signal. So because Ethereum managed to rally and close above the 1984 resistance region, and you can see there on the chart, this has further increased the probability that we're now in a bull market on not just Ethereum, but also Bitcoin as well. Again, from the perspective of the Dow theory. So given all these reasons I mentioned in this particular video, I'm remaining bullish on Bitcoin for the remainder of 2023. Now, of course, I could be wrong. It's possible that maybe we're seeing a bunch of false signals. You might say, well, maybe this time is different. That's true. But the fact is, as you can see from the chart, from this monthly chart of Bitcoin, we do not have the kiss of death signal. And in fact, I'm not expecting a kiss of death signal, as I mentioned to you in this video. So I think the probability of seeing a kiss of death signal, in other words, the probability of yet another collapse and drop back below the lows of last year, I think that's a very low probability. I'm not expecting it. In fact, I think as long as Bitcoin can stay above the 20 or 22K level there, I'm not expecting any kind of kiss of death signal or any major bearish sign. Now, if Bitcoin were to drop below the 22K or 20K levels, then I would have to change my mind and become bearish. However, guys, I am not bearish. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, as long as Bitcoin can protect and stay above the 20K or 22K levels, I am remaining bullish and optimistic and positive for Bitcoin for this year in 2023. And I think in the next several months of this year, we could see much higher levels on Bitcoin. All right, guys, hope this video has helped. Make sure you watch also our member videos. In the member videos, we go into much more detail with Elliott wave theory. Plus, also apart from Bitcoin, we take a look at the chart of gold and the stock markets as well. Thank you very much indeed. And by the way, make sure you check out the link from Masterworks, which is also in the description as well. Thank you very much. Bye for now.